I love going on business trips abroad. The airport always has an exciting vibe to it. Ever since I was a student, I've loved traveling, so I chose a job where I would get to travel frequently. Some might say it's a simple reason for choosing a job, but I think that's just how motives work. It turned out to be a great decision to work for a well-known trading company in my hometown. I dedicated all my efforts to learning languages during middle school, high school, and college, which paid off when I started job hunting. Being fluent in 6 languages, I was offered a job on the spot. While my friends were busy job hunting, I spent my time working part-time jobs and traveling to hone my language skills. My name is Tyler, and I'm 27 years old this year. I might still be considered a novice in the professional world, but I pride myself on contributing more to the company than any of my peers. It might sound presumptuous, but it's the result of seriously committing to my work. This week started with a business trip abroad, as usual for me. It's just another day for me. But on this day, my fate was about to change dramatically. The international airport had regained its usual bustle, teeming with tourists and businessmen from abroad. I enjoy the lively atmosphere, but I'm not fond of crowds. I tried to avoid bumping into people as I reviewed the details of my business negotiations in my head. This time, I wouldn't have a colleague to back me up. I was the only one I could rely on for this deal. I was thinking about being more focused than usual, when suddenly, an unusual sight caught my eye. The crowd parted like Moses parting the Red Sea. Wondering what was happening, I saw a young woman on all fours, searching for something through the parted crowd. She seemed to be a college student, repeatedly saying "I'm sorry" as she searched for something. I thought she might have dropped her contact lens, but she was wearing glasses. She must have dropped something very important to her to be crawling on the floor in such embarrassment. The other travelers looked on with curiosity from a distance. I couldn't just stand by and watch, so I decided to squat down next to her and ask, "Are you okay? Did you drop something?" Startled by my voice, she looked up suddenly. Her face, with its long eyelashes and large eyes, was so beautifully doll-like that I found myself momentarily captivated. "I've lost something very important. I don't know what to do." She said this and quickly looked back down at the floor. "Is it a ticket or passport?" In this situation, I could only think of those 2 items as important, so I asked. But she shook her head. "It's a keepsake from my father. I always wear it, but the leather of the choker it was on must have broken without me noticing," she said, touching her neck slightly. "It must be something like a pendant that was his keepsake." Once I heard it was a keepsake from her father, I couldn't just walk away. It's the same for me. My father had left when I was born, and my mother raised me by herself. She passed away the year I got my job. I always carry her watch, her keepsake. Without it, I feel like everything goes wrong. It's a white stone about this size," she explained, making a circle with her thumb and forefinger. "I'll help you look. We'll definitely find it, don't worry," I said, smiling at her. Please don't call my words irresponsible. I was determined to find it, and you have to have that kind of attitude if you want to find something lost. It seems my smile gave her some courage, as hope sparkled in her previously despairing eyes. If you don't give up, most things will work out somehow. That's something my mom used to say often. "Excuse me, I've dropped something important," I said to the people around us as I got down on all fours like her to search the floor. Hoping it wasn't stepped on, I scrutinized the floor, but I couldn't see anything resembling it. You're going to work, right? Please prioritize your own work. I'd be happy if you have the time, but," she said apologetically. It seemed she was concerned about my boarding time. Hearing that, I checked my watch. there was still time before my flight. She looked curiously at me as she noticed the women's watch I was wearing. I chuckled and showed her my wrist, saying, "It's a keepsake from my mom." Hearing it was a keepsake, her expression crumpled as if she was about to cry. "Don't cry, okay? I don't want to be seen as a bad guy making a young girl cry," I said hastily, and she laughed through her tears. Her quickly changing expressions were also charming. It felt like I was smitten for the first time in a while. This business negotiation is an important one. All negotiations are important, but this one is truly special. I'm sorry, but once it's time, I'll have to stop helping her. As I searched, I kept checking my watch. I was concerned about the time. That's what I was confirming and worried about. Yet, in just a few minutes, I would be holding my head in my hands. "Ah, there it is. I found it." Her voice came from a few meters away where she had been searching. She ran over to me, plopped down next to me sitting on the floor. "This is it. This is my father's mutton fat jade." She showed me a translucent, milky white stone. It had a warmer and softer appearance than jade. "Thank you so much, really." She repeatedly said thank you. Her tears of joy caused her mascara to run. "I'm glad we didn't give up. See, don't cry, or I'll look like the bad guy," I said as I pulled out a handkerchief from my suit pocket to wipe away the mascara that had smeared from her tears, and she smiled shyly. "Thank you. Oh, I'd like to thank you properly, but I'm sorry. It looks like it's almost boarding time." Saying this, she looked at the departure board in front of us. "Don't worry about it. Just make sure you don't miss your flight. Hurry along." I stood up and offered her a hand. She sprang up energetically. I thought she would return the handkerchief, but instead, she neatly folded it and tucked it into her pocket. "I'll hold this handkerchief hostage until we meet again. I promise to return it nicely ironed," she said, thanking me again and running towards the gate. It seems her destination was somewhere in Spain. After she disappeared toward the gate and I checked the departure board, I took a deep breath in relief, but then, a sudden realization made my blood run cold. My boarding time had passed. Wait, I tried desperately to calm myself. Despite how often I had checked the time, I frantically checked the time on my watch and was stunned. The second hand on my watch seemed to be stuck, just pacing in place. Time wasn't moving at all. It had been working fine until this morning. Even when I arrived at the airport, it was still showing the correct time. I have no idea when it broke. There's no way I can make it to the negotiation now. The contract might be gone, and my job might be on the line too. Thinking about this, I couldn't help but laugh weakly. "Mom, why are you playing such tricks on me?" I spoke to the keepsake watch from my mother, but of course, there was no reply. "I've been had," I muttered as I sat down on a nearby chair. But I almost found myself disgusted at how content I felt. Remembering her tearful smile, I found myself thinking, well, it happens. I called the office from the airport, heart pounding as I explained to the section chief, Kevin, that I had missed the flight and wouldn't make it to the negotiation. He immediately told me to stay home until tomorrow. Probably because he didn't want to see my face. There was no one from our company on site there. No matter what I tried, the negotiation was doomed. I wondered what they were saying about me at work. That I got too cocky, or perhaps there were some who were glad to see me fail, which made me feel even worse. Well, what's done is done. I decided to quietly wait at home until the company made its decision, and with heavy steps, I returned home. The call from the office came late at night. Unable to sleep, I was idly reading a book when my phone rang with a call from work. It was Kevin. He told me in a tired voice to come to the president's office as soon as I arrived at work in the morning tomorrow. The negotiation had obviously failed, and it was a huge blow to our company. Kevin told me that no one expected me to mess up like this, which made me feel even worse. I couldn't possibly say that it was because my watch had stopped. I understand. I'll go straight to the president's office when I arrive at work tomorrow, I said and hung up the phone. I felt strangely liberated after I prepared what would likely be needed, a resignation letter. The next morning, as soon as I arrived at work, the head of the department, George, signaled to me and escorted me to the president's office. It was a place I had only been a few times since joining the company. I could only remember entering it when I made a big project successful. Excuse me. Following George into the president's office, our president, Mr. Thompson, was sitting in the front chair, drinking coffee. He glanced at me and George, took a sip of his coffee, and then spoke calmly. Tyler, I assume you are fully aware of what you have done. But let me get straight to the point. You are terminated as of today. I hope you understand that this decision was made considering the loss you have caused our company. I was expecting to be yelled at, so Mr. Thompson's calm demeanor felt like a cold splash of water. It would have been clearer if he had just shown his anger. Not even allowed to excuse myself because he didn't shout. It's all my fault. I am truly sorry. I have brought my resignation letter. Please accept it. I stepped forward and gently placed the resignation letter I had written last night on his desk. Why would you make such a basic mistake? I truly think it's a waste, but I need you to understand that neither the counterpart nor our staff would be satisfied unless we do this. Mr. Thompson had faith in me. I felt terrible for letting him down. Is there a reason for this? At his words, I just shook my head. It's all my responsibility, I said, deeply apologizing. No matter the reason, I was the one who made the choice. My choices are my responsibility. This was also a lesson from my late mother. Next to me, George's face turned red, and his hefty body trembled slightly. He probably thought Mr. Thompson would scold me severely. Frustrated by his calm approach, George was unable to vent his anger by yelling at me. I realized we never really saw eye to eye. And so, I resigned from the trading company. After leaving the president's office, he yelled and even struck me. I expected to be yelled at since it was the end, but I never thought he would physically attack me. In a reflex, I hit back, and I truly regret that, but I hope we can both write it off as a final clash. Suddenly jobless, I spent the first week of unemployment idly, meaninglessly. I think it's the first time I've ever been this idle. Wanting to support my mother, who raised me alone, I had devoted my student days to studying and working part-time. I had no time to waste. Maybe this is some sort of vacation given by God. Thinking this, I looked out the window. The sky was clear, not a cloud in sight. The room was eerily silent when I heard a faint ticking sound. What? I jumped out of bed and grabbed my mother's watch, which had been lying untouched on my desk since the day I resigned. No way. The watch had started working again, ticking away the time. I remembered I had planned to get it repaired. I recalled that she also had her whimsical moments and couldn't help but smile. Fate is such a fickle thing. Thinking this, I felt as if everything had cleared up. It's a perfect sunny day to start a new life. I booted up my computer and began looking for a new job. Somewhere far from this city, somewhere I've never been would be nice. But maybe I should take a trip first. I've traveled abroad extensively but haven't explored much within the US. I closed the job search tabs and opened a domestic travel site. Is this what you meant, Mom? I asked the photo of my mother. I could almost see her smiling wryly at me. Weeks later, I was still wandering across America. Wow, that's huge. Before me stood an 11.5 meters tall sculpture of a black and white dog lifting a taxi with its nose. Impressive, to say the least. More sacred than cute, it was a curious sight. The dog sculpture in front of a children's hospital. I had seen it in a magazine and had wanted to see it with my own eyes. With few people around, I stood in silence facing the black and white dog, feeling a sense of tranquility. My heart was calm, completely serene. I suddenly remembered the white handkerchief I gave to that girl at the airport that day. I wonder how she is doing now. As I recalled, I started to become curious. Maybe it's time to wrap up this journey. I tried speaking to the dog in front of me. Of course, the black and white dog didn't answer. But I felt as if it had given me a push. A few days later, I was attending a job interview. The day I saw the black and white dog, I returned home and immediately began the process of canceling my apartment lease and started preparing to move. Not in this city, but to a new one. I decided to throw away all the old things. It was time for a fresh start. This was my third interview. It was with a small trading company located near the harbor. They dealt in antique goods and tea. It was a bit old, but they had their office in their own building where the interview was conducted. When I informed the receptionist about my interview, a friendly receptionist immediately guided me to the president's office. The vibe inside the company was lively, and everyone casually greeted me, a stranger, which felt nice. It seemed like a very open and communicative company. "Mr. Johnson, the candidate for the interview has arrived." Without waiting for a response, the receptionist pushed open the door and pushed me forward slightly before closing it. I stumbled into the president's office, and the person who seemed to be Mr. Johnson was watching and laughing. "My name is Tyler. Thank you for your time today." As I began my interview greeting, Mr. Johnson fluttered his hand and said, "No need for that. I'm David Johnson, a president here. I've heard about you. You botched a big deal, right? I remember George from that company spreading the word when I saw your resume. It seems the industry is small." George had been broadcasting my failure far and wide like a public announcement vehicle. "Looking at your resume, I remembered something else," Mr. Johnson said with a sly grin. "Could there be even worse news about me?" I let out a small sigh, thinking this interview might also be doomed. More bad reputations about me. I expected to be rejected anyway. I was getting tired of making excuses. I thought I might as well hear what terrible rumors there were. I've seen a foolish person before, at the airport, crawling on all fours on the floor. His words made me catch my breath. Could he have been there that day? Making a pretty girl cry, that's asking for trouble. He grinned. Apparently, he had watched everything until the end. He must have seen me looking desperate after missing the plane. "Were you at the airport that day?" "Yo, I thought I saw something interesting. When your resume came in, I recognized your face. No need for an interview, you're hired," he said with a laugh, holding a letter of appointment that already had my name on it. He waved the document playfully and said cheerfully, "Welcome to our company," leaving me so surprised I almost cried. Hey, I hate seeing men cry." As he said that, he offered me a handkerchief. I took it, saying sorry, and then stopped abruptly. This handkerchief. Yes, the hostage handkerchief. Want to know why I have it?" Seeing my astonished expression, he looked thoroughly amused. "I do. Please tell me." I impulsively leaned across the desk towards Mr. Johnson. He revealed everything with a grin. A few weeks after I left my previous company, he visited that trading company where I was fired, apparently on a business trip. At that time, there was someone causing a commotion at the entrance of the company. It turned out to be that girl who was searching for her father's keepsake at the airport. She seemed to be confronting George, asking him why I was fired. He amusedly recounted how fierce her demeanor was. Why was my workplace? It was from your name card. My name card was somehow in my pocket. By accident, it seemed to be slipped inside the handkerchief. Then I passed it to her without realizing my name card was in there. Sophia is, oh, that girl's name, she's quite a character, has a lot of guts, or rather, she's just a fun person to be around. Apparently, when George yelled that I quit, she shot back, quit, you fired him. Since it involved personal information, she couldn't get his contact details and ended up being thrown out by the security, where Mr. Johnson then picked her up as an office clerk. I also heard about what happened at the airport. I discussed it with Mr. Thompson from the company. He said it was a loss to let go of such a talented person. I was surprised that Mr. Thompson still considered me a valuable asset despite the significant loss I had caused to the company. A pang of regret that I had almost forgotten came surging back. Mr. Johnson said he promised her he would look into my situation after hearing her story. He kept the handkerchief as a sort of promissory note. I kept posting job ads to lure you in, and I waited quite a while for you to bite. The job listing that appeared with extraordinary benefits and seemed tailor-made for me was all bait to reel me in. I was truly impressed by his strategy. It seemed he would be good at business too. Is that so? Just as I nodded in realization, the office door burst open with such force I thought it had been kicked in. Ah, Sophia, you took your time. He waved at a person behind me. She must have hurried over. As I turned around, there she was, panting. Couldn't you have contacted me the day before? With a voice as deep as if it echoed from hell, she spoke. He pretended not to hear her. You came all the way to the office for me. As I turned to her and began to speak, she suddenly let out an indescribable scream. She pointed at my hand and gaped at him. Why did you already give him the handkerchief? You said you were just keeping it. She protested, while he grinned mischievously. Well, it's because he was about to cry. What, you made him cry? I can't believe it, making a promising young man cry, and you're an adult. I couldn't help but laugh at their exchange that sounded almost like a comedy routine. The way she talked to the president, even though she was an office clerk, and how Mr. Johnson skillfully manipulated the situation, it was all too much. Ah, I was being played just as much. Realizing this, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Ha ha, I can't take it anymore. I burst out laughing and crouched down. Now, I felt like tears of laughter were about to come out. What's wrong? Are you okay? She leaned in with a serious look, concerned about me. That worried look on her face made me burst into laughter again. Seeing her face, I just started laughing again. Hey, isn't that a bit rude? She puffed out her cheeks in protest, and I quickly apologized, saying, sorry, and she forgave me. Sophia said that she had been searching for me all this time. She said she went along with Mr. Johnson's plan because she thought there was no other way to find me. She felt like she was grasping at straws. She really wanted to meet me. I was glad to hear she felt that way. She was in a rush to make up for not being able to thank me properly that day and for not knowing what had happened to me afterward. Listening to her, I realized she was a very straightforward person. She said, laughing, that she took the job at this company to wait for me. Really, thank you for that time. Back then, I truly believed I couldn't live without it. The mutton fat jade was swaying at her throat. But after that, I felt I couldn't live without seeing you. She bashfully told me that my profile looked cool as I searched desperately on the floor amidst a crowd for someone else. I think my dad made sure we met. He knew you were the one who would make me happy, so he made sure I wouldn't mistake it. Hearing her words made sense to me. Maybe my mom's watch stopped as a prank to reunite me and her. That thought started to make sense. It's fine if it's just as friends. I want you to know more about me, and hopefully, to think fondly of me. With a serious expression, she said this, and I couldn't help but nod in agreement. Hey, can I deduct the cost of the job ad from your salaries? No way, we shouted at the same time. He clicked his tongue softly. That's how my re-employment was decided. It seemed like the whole staff knew about Sophia's and my story, as we were greeted with applause when we left the president's office, leaving me too embarrassed yet happy to raise my face. I quickly blended into the workplace and colleagues as if I had always worked there, and worked harder than ever before. Working was fun, and above all, I wanted to look cool in front of Sophia. Mr. Johnson is already eager to be the witness when Sophia and I marry. Right now, Sophia is laughing next to me as we watch TV. That day is probably not too far off. Her wrist shone with my mother's keepsake watch.